do is a small little, not game, but kind of icebreaker. And now there's a buzzword for icebreaker, and it's called connection before content. And so hopefully you have sat with people that you don't know, and we want you to get to know them. We want you to introduce yourself, okay? So you're going to introduce yourself, and then you're going to tell them how you heard about the Rosenwald School, what you know about the Rosenwald School, and why you're here. What's your interest, okay? And we're going to do that individually at tables, and at the same time, we're going to be calling people up to go and eat. So this is what we'll do while we're eating. We're going to mingle and have that little game.
Let us pray. Eternal God and Father, we thank you once again for your divine blessings. God, we thank you for this beautiful, awesome day that you have made for us. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of it. And God, we invite your presence in this setting. And God, we thank you for the food which has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. We ask you to sanctify for that purpose. Again, God, we thank you for all things. In the blessed name of Jesus, might we all say, amen.
We started this in 2009. I was with my grandmother and we were going to what I call downtown. I don't remember what we were going to get, but probably some ice cream, I'm sure. To sit on the front street because she liked the people watch, so that's what we were going to go do. And we passed this building, and I'm originally from the shore, so I'm sure I saw this building on several occasions, but just didn't pay any attention to it. And I think because of my background in urban planning, it then piqued my interest. And I asked her what was that building, and she said, well, that was the building for Black children that lived in Cape Charles. And I said, well, why in the world is it just sitting there? And she says, well, I don't know. And I said, okay, well, who can I call? And I decided to call Miss Davis. Miss Diane Davis was a teacher of mine at Northampton High School. And when I called her, she said, oh, that was a school for Black children. I said, well, do you know anybody that went there? She goes, yeah, I did. I go, oh my goodness. So she then gave me the names of several other people that went to the school. I talked to my husband, and at that time we didn't have any kids, so this was really easy for me to do. I talked to him and I said, okay, we're gonna put together a breakfast, and at the breakfast we're gonna invite all the alumni, and then we're gonna put together a lunch, and at the lunch we're gonna invite all the town people. So they can talk and they can get together and meet. And that's what we did, and that was in November of 2009. We went on to get a historic marker placed at the school in 2011. The building was owned after it closed in 1966. It was owned by the Robert family, and they had an eel packing plant there. And I called up the lady that owned it, and she was actually the daughter of Robert, and she appreciated what we were trying to do. She said, but my history there is going there as a child with my dad while he worked. And so I appreciate your history, but I'm not interested in selling the building. And at the time, I think she had it listed for like $899,000. It might have been $1 million. She had it at $1 million, then $899,000, then $799,000, then $699,000. And I said, well, do you know that this building assesses for the property and the building assessed for $180,000. And she says, and I said, have you seen it lately? And she says, no, but that doesn't matter. I said, okay. So then we knew we weren't going to get the building right away, and we had to pivot. So on your tables, most of you have on your tables the oral history booklet. And that oral history booklet is then what we decided to do. We got a grant through the Virginia Humanities, and we worked with Old Dominion University, and Dr. Schultz, who I mentioned could not be here today. She was the manager and the program manager for this particular project, and we interviewed 17 to 18 different alumni. And some of those alumni are actually here today. So I want our alumni, if you can stand, I would love for you, but if you can't, can you raise your hand so we can acknowledge you as alumni of the Cape Charles Elementary School. Thank you so much. And as I stated before, we do have several members of our board that are alumni. And we like that because we can hear from them and hear their concerns and hear their thoughts. So going and doing things in the community and then trying to do this oral history booklet and getting to know different people in the community, we then decided we have to do something. And we have to make another go at this building. And we kind of didn't know what to do. And then one day I got a Facebook message. Now, some of you may not like Facebook, but I like Facebook. I like Twitter, I like Instagram. And I got a Facebook message, and it said, "Are you still interested in purchasing the building?" And I thought it was, I thought it was a joke. And so I did not say anything right away, and it came again, and I said, "Yes, who is this?" And she said, "I am the niece of the owner." And she said, "Give me an offer." I said, "Well, I'm not going to give you an offer over Facebook, but I can get with our realtor." Now, we didn't have a realtor, but I told her we would get with our realtor. And so Chuck then became our realtor, and he began negotiations, and he did an awesome job. We were able, through grants and through the wonderful partners and donors that we have, and they are here today, and I'm going to acknowledge them, we were able to purchase the building for $275,000. Yes, far cry from $790,000. So I do want to acknowledge those people that helped us with that, and that would be Mr. Furlong Baldwin, who's here, who helped us with that. And also Beth Walker and her husband, who helped us. So the awesome thing is that we, most of that was through a grant that a donation that they gave us. But there was a portion that was, we were going to pay back. It was a loan. And I really don't like owing people anything. I like spending money, but I don't like owing people anything. So I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And a friend of mine said, "I want you to call somebody, and I want you to talk to this person, and I want you to talk to them." And if you know anything about the initiative, we believe that what we're doing is a worthy cause, and we're going to get into that. But we also feel this drive behind it that we are saying is divine. And whether you believe in divine, we don't know, but we believe that that's pushing us. And so I called this woman, and I was didn't know who she was, and she was just as nice. And she says, "Well, I want to give a gift to the school. I love what you're doing, and I want to give a gift." And the gift that she gave was the exact amount that we owed for the loan. So, and that person is here today, and she probably doesn't want me to recognize her, but I'm going to. And that's Kim Abod, who did that. I don't think she even knows. Did you know that? She didn't even know the back behind that. So I think this is the first time that she's even heard that what she gave was the gap. Did you know that? No? Okay. All right. So, anyway, so now we're here, and we have been doing work, and we're going to talk to you, the second segment, we're going to talk to you about all the work that we have been doing behind the scenes. And we know when you pass the building, you're like, what are they doing? We are doing so much. You just can't see it because there's so much that has to be done foundationally before you'll see everything sprout. So, what's going to happen first is we're going to call up Mary Ruffin-Hanbury, and she is going to speak to us about the history of Rosenwald schools in general and then our school specifically. And we've provided you on the back of your programs here with a brief bio of Mary, and I'll just read a little bit. Mary Ruffin-Hanbury is a founding principal of Hanbury Preservation Consulting, a firm established to help communities and organizations plan for the future by understanding and protecting those resources that provide a sense of place and a quality of life. And she is actually our consultant that will help this building get on the National and State Historic Register. We received a grant through the Virginia Department of the Virginia Department of Historic Resources for her services. And today marks, and this is the thing, Mary is not new to the Eastern Shore. She visits often, but today and yesterday was her first time in the school. And I know she thought it was lovely, right? Okay. And so she's going to speak to us today. I'm going to bring up her presentation while she comes. Please welcome her.
I'm thrilled to be here. I live in Raleigh, but I'm a native of Portsmouth, so just over the bridge. And in the 1990s, I worked for the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. They had a regional office in Portsmouth, and part of my territory was the Eastern Shore. And I don't know if you all ever heard the Uncle Remus stories about Brer Rabbit not wanting to be in the briar patch, but I was like, oh, please don't send me to the Eastern Shore. I mean, I found every excuse I could find to come over to the shore. And so it is lovely to be back, and I've told many people in this room just this morning, I've been watching this building, since the mid-1990s. And I guess if you live long enough, and you hope long enough, these little buildings that kind of stay in your heart, you get to see them reborn. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be working on this. I'm not entirely sure I'm thrilled with the technology here. If only my teenage son were here, I'd know I could get this to work. But if it doesn't, I'm going to go use a touch screen. Fantastic. There may be people in here who know more about, may have forgotten more about Rosenwald schools than I'm going to be able to tell you. And so if this is all review, just smile politely. But maybe for some of you who don't know a lot about the Rosenwald program, I wanted to start by talking about that. And it really starts with Booker T. Washington, who was at Tuskegee. And Tuskegee, a part of its early mission was to be a teacher training school, to teach children in primary and secondary schools. And the problem was there weren't very many primary and secondary schools for African Americans in the late 19th and early 20th century in America. And so what good was having the teachers if they didn't have any place to teach the children? And so he became really passionate about this. And before Rosenwald, there was a guy named Henry Rogers, and that's the guy with the mustache. He was with Standard Oil. So John D. Rockefeller, a lot of money. And he was really the first person that Booker T. Washington talked to before he talked to Rosenwald. And Rosenwald's down on the bottom left. So Rosenwald does deserve a lot of credit, but I think it's always interesting to know that these things have an origin beyond Rosenwald. So from 1904 to 1909, Henry Rogers funded 46 schools in Alabama. That was the first impetus towards these school building programs. But Rogers died, and when he died, that source of funding was cut off. And in 1911, soon thereafter, Julius Rosenwald, who had heard about Booker T. Washington, invited him up to Chicago for a fundraiser for Tuskegee. And they hadn't met before then, but having this fundraiser and chit-chatting, and I'm sure Booker T. Washington took the opportunity to say, we used to have this program with Mr. Rogers, and it's run out of funding. And so Rosenwald was like, absolutely, I think that's a great idea. And so in 1912, Rosenwald funds 6 initial schools in Alabama, providing funding to build the schools through a matching, and then started a matching grant program for additional schools that was operated out of Tuskegee's. And then in 1915, Booker T. Washington dies, and at that point, the program has funded 306 schools in Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. I think it's important to realize that also it was not just Booker T. Washington and Julius Rosenwald, but it was Booker T. Washington's widow. That's Mary Murray Washington, third wife. His first 2 predeceased him. And after his death, she really was a link to kind of keep this program going, to keep the Julius Rosenwald engaged, and to help start forming some policies to make it a standardized program. And so they wanted to be systemic. They wanted to start having rules. So in order to have one of these schools, you had to have at least 2 acres of land, because they wanted not only to have a school, but they wanted to have a schoolyard. This is where the children could play. They looked at the fact that they wanted to make sure that the community was buying in. So whether that was the African American community or the school board, that this was not entirely a gimmick, that they needed to be a partnership. Because people support what they help create, and they wanted to make sure that the local community had skin in the game. And that could either be donation of land, it could be money, it could be sweat equity. A lot of Rosenwald schools, the local contribution came from people who actually built the schools, brick masons and carpenters. So she was a big part of helping get that systemic. In 1915, they started developing standard plans for school buildings. And they used two architects who had gone to Tuskegee, Robert Taylor and W.A. Hazel. Robert Taylor has had a postage stamp of him. He's one of the earliest black architects in America, and his great niece grew up in Virginia Beach and went to high school with me. Shout out to the Robert Taylor. I don't know much about W.A. Hazel, but I know about Robert Taylor. He's originally from Wilmington, North Carolina. But his great niece grew up in Virginia Beach. I have something else to say about him, but I'm one of these, I've gotten to the point where seeing notes that I can't remember direct names. I'll come back to it when I remember who else is related to Taylor. But the idea was they wanted to have standard plans so that they could make sure that there was a benchmark of quality for these buildings. Most of them are frame, wooden schools. And really the hallmark is these big banks of windows. And, we see them here in this elementary school. That is a quality that has remained, is that the idea that it provides ventilation, before they had air conditioning, but also a lot of natural light, which was good for the students. I'll also mention that it's very interesting. Once you've seen a lot of these Rosenwald schools, if you're driving somewhere, you might drive to Simon Road and you'll see one that looks like it. Those standard plans were also open for other people to use. So sometimes you will be someplace rural and you'll see a school and you're like, oh, that's a Rosenwald school. It was actually a school built for whites because they were allowed to use the same standard plans. So you always have to kind of be careful when you drive along and you see one of these buildings to kind of get the full story and not just assume. The program became so big that Rosenwald established it as its own nonprofit, independent of Tuskegee, in 1917, and he started the Rosenwald Fund, and Julius Rosenwald actively directed it through 1928. They moved the school building program to Nashville in 1920. In addition to school buildings, they also provided scholarships. They also provided funding for programs at colleges and universities. It was bigger than the school building program, but that's kind of what everyone knows, and basically what our primary interest is in him today. Julius Rosenwald ran it until 28. He was getting to be pretty old by then, and a guy named Edwin Embry took over to direct it. Rosenwald died in 1932, and Rosenwald had a very specific feeling about philanthropy. He didn't think that philanthropic efforts should run in perpetuity. He thought that the people who raised the money and who provided it, that should help the generation of people who were alive at the time. And so he wanted to make sure it was all spent down within 20 years of his death, and it was. So in 1937, 5 years after Rosenwald dies, the school building program ends, and then finally in 1948, the fund closes. So it's a very specific period in American history. It didn't last forever, but it did a lot in a short period of time. The Rosenwald School in Cape Charles, the Cape Charles Elementary School, is brick. It's unusual, and that's one of the things that I'm interested in learning more about. It is modeled after the four-teacher school, which you can see the design on, I guess it's your right. So it's adapted from a standard plan, but a little different. And I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about the Cape Charles is it's a little special. It's a little different than sort of the ones that you'll see, in other parts of the South. And I think there's probably a story there. By the time the program ended, and this is a map that's shown a lot, it's the statistics for the entire program are on the left. The map's not entirely, it was near the end, but they helped fund 5,357 schools in 15 states and 883 counties. They also paid for teachers' housing. Sometimes if there was a separate building for a VOTEC aspect of the building, they paid for the privies, if they were outside privies. So it wasn't just the schools, it was a lot of adjacent buildings as well. But that's a lot of schools in that period of time. Brownby Board of Education was decided in 1954. Brown II in 1955 directed that schools needed to be integrated with all deliberate speed. In Virginia, we're special because that didn't quite happen. We had massive resistance in 1956, and integration was slower in Virginia than in other parts of the South. But one of the consequences of integration is that in sometimes, and I think one that maybe wasn't anticipated, is it kind of pulled the feet out from under a lot of African American institutions. You find throughout the South, if there were separate schools, once they were integrated, the white children didn't go to the black schools, the black children went to the white schools, and the black schools were abandoned. And this is typical. I mean, this is not just Cape Charles. I worked on a Rosenwald school in Raleigh, where I live now. Same thing. And it sat there empty. And while I don't think anyone thinks integration is bad, it really did undercut some of these institutions that had been important in the African American community, and they were no longer used. And so a lot of these schools, Rosenwald or not, that were serving African Americans were abandoned after integration. In 2002, the National Trust for Historic Preservation put Rosenwald schools on their 11 most endangered list, which is an annual list of endangered properties around the country. I was working for the National Trust at that time out of their southern office. We had a great meeting at Fisk University, which now has the archives of the Rosenwald program in Nashville. And for probably 2 decades, the National Trust provided a lot of guidance and support in terms of trying to get a handle on how many Rosenwald schools there were, what kind of condition they were in, how can we support them, how can we, if you've got a standard plan for architecture, maybe you've got standard problems and we can work with architects to help people solve the problems for their buildings. They reached out to the Rosenwald family, Alice Rosenwald, Peter Astley, provided a lot of funding that went out to individual Rosenwald schools and that funded conferences, including conferences to help people learn about fundraising. As a matter of fact, I think I met Tevye at one of those conferences that was funded by them up at John T. Tyler, what was once John T. Tyler Community College. In 2013, Preservation Virginia also named Rosenwald schools to their endangered list. There's a guy who worked there at the time named Justin Seraphin, who was the project manager with him. And he and I worked together to develop a strategic plan for Preservation Virginia for how they were going to provide help to Rosenwald schools. I think when you're a nonprofit, you say this is most endangered and that's all you do. That's not very useful. So part of Preservation Virginia's plan was to follow up with that to say, in addition to getting Rosenwald schools this attention, what can we do? So they did a lot of study, and my eyes are not good enough to read all of this, but there were 382 schools in 86 counties and 4 cities. They've got a readout of all the different types of schools that were built. But when they did the survey, they found that there were only 126 left standing and 256 had been demolished. They have, if you go online, a wonderful interactive map where they've mapped, they took the Fisk archives, so they got sort of the known universe of Rosenwald schools in Virginia. They went out and they tried to find every single one, and if they weren't there, they put a pin on the map that said it's not there anymore, and if it was there, they put a different color pin to say it's still there. So they did a huge amount of work across the state and getting all of this information into the database at the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. So I want to switch and talk a little bit about designation, and I think I've already gone over I was told to keep this short, not by anyone in an official capacity, but I may have gone over my short period, but I want to talk a little bit about designation because that's what I'm here for. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Virginia Department of Historic Resources administers 2 different designation programs, the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register of Historic Places. The National Register has been around since 1966, the Virginia Landmarks Register a little earlier because Virginians love their history. But these programs use the same documents and the same process to get listed and to get that official designation as historic. They use the same forms, a very similar process. So you do one set of forms, and every quarter they have a meeting of 2 different boards. They meet in joint session. And one board will look at the nomination and say, yes, we're going to put it on the Virginia Landmarks Register today. The other board, which is looks at the National Register, says, yes, we are recommending this goes to the Park Service, and the National Park Service has the final say on the National Register. So they look at the same materials, these 2 boards at the same time. They meet every quarter, and they move it around the state. So sometimes it's in Richmond, sometimes it's somewhere else. And they will say, yes, this should be on the Virginia Landmarks Register, and yes, we think this should be on the National Register. We're going to ask the National Park Service to put it on. There are all sorts of types of properties that can be put on the National Register. There are districts, there are archaeological sites, there are buildings. I just took this in Pear Valley this week. I was so excited. I got really late. Structures and objects. And I had a great picture of the Mill Mountain Star in Roanoke, if you know it, which is also on the National Register of Historic Places. So my job is to write the National Register nomination. The National Register nomination has a bunch of parts of the form that are sort of boilerplate, like address, is it a building, structure, site, or object? But it has 2 big pieces of narrative. One is a physical description. So I went over to the school yesterday and took a lot of pictures. I'll probably have to come back a couple times in case there was something I didn't get a picture of, but a fairly long narrative description of what it looks like. You know, it's got wonderful brickwork, Flemish bond. Whoever the masons were pretty sophisticated. It's got some concrete sills. It's got concrete that's stamped by the guy whose name I can't remember, but who had concrete contracting company in Cape Charles. Is it Todd, Mr. Todd? No. Todd Godwin. So I'm sure there's some involvement. The limited research I've done here says that maybe Mr. C.L. Russell is responsible for the construction. I spent a good part of Friday morning in the Northampton County Clerk's office and did a deed research, and I had a great picture, which I'll show someone on my phone if you want to see it. But when the school board bought the land, the 2 acres from the railroad, there's a beautiful hand-drawn survey map showing the site. It's just, some beautiful surveyor did a lovely job, and it's a little work of art there in the deed books in Northampton County. So we'll be writing about the description and then writing about the significance, a statement of significance. In Virginia, that's made a little easier because someone has done, and this is getting way into the weeds of the National Register, but something called a multiple property document that talks about the history of Rosenwald schools generally. And it makes it a little easier to get a Rosenwald school put on the National Register in Virginia. What that means, though, is that that kind of low-hanging fruit about Rosenwald, which is fairly easy to research, has already been done. And I'm left with the very specific things about the Cape Charles Rosenwald School. So one of the things I'd like to do before I tie up, and again, I'm getting close to the end, is to tell you that I'm going to hang around after the meeting is over, and any of you who would be willing to let me telephone you and talk to you or come up, meet with you next time I'm up here, who feel like you've got information that would be useful to talk to me about, specifically about the history of this school, I would really, really like to talk to you. I will finish the nomination. It will then go to the state, and it will be put on the agenda for the quarterly board meetings. I've told the people on the board that I'd like to get it done fairly quickly, but within the next couple of months, I'm going to be moving my mother to assisted living, which means I'm going to be going with my sisters to sort through furniture and belongings and moving. So there's going to be a little period of time over the holidays where I am off the hook. But if you don't hear from me, it's not that I'm not going to pick it right back up as soon as we've done that, but I like to manage expectations about my timeliness and know that that's on my docket. So with that, should I take questions now? If anyone has questions, I'm glad to answer them.
I have one.
Yes,
How
ma'am.
did Mr. Rosenwald make his money?
Good question. Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears, Roebuck and Company. So, I mean, he had a lot of money. And what's really interesting to me, he was a great philanthropist. He was a big-hearted guy. What I love is one of my favorite things that he did is he established a YMCA for African Americans in Chicago because the YMCAs were segregated. But think about it, he was Jewish and he was building the YMCA. So So it's the Young Men's Christian Association being built by a Jewish man. I mean, there's some irony there. But I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. So he was CEO of Sears Roebuck. Sears isn't around very much, but most of us are old enough to remember the catalog. Most of us probably old enough to remember going into a real Sears store. So he was.
Comment, two questions, just for general information. Two of the YMCA's here on the shore were rented once by Jewish guys.
Excellent. So there's a.
If they get on the National Historic Register, that restricts what they can do to the building.
Thank you. That was one of my slides. The National Register of Historic Places and the Virginia Landmark Register are honorific. It's sort of like the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Once you've got that, people, that's a known brand, a known accomplishment. It does not restrict private property rights in any way.
But what you can do to the building.
Nope. You could rip it down. I'm not advocating to do that. You could paint it purple. Being on the National Register does not. Now, where people get confused is that there are local historic districts in Virginia that are established by a local government where there is architectural control. And, people have strong feelings on either side of that. But the state and the national have absolutely no abridgment of any private property rights that you already have vested in the property. It does have some control about federally funded programs. So if VDOT wanted to put a highway through that building and it was on the National Register, it could delay and possibly stop that. But that's a control on a federal project. It does not abridge any private property rights. But it is an honor, and that's really why most people want to do it, is to have that history document and have that honor. It also helps with fundraising because it's on the National Register, which means it's not just that we think it's important. The federal government agrees with us and has put it on the register. It is therefore officially important. It is sometimes the threshold for specific grants or financial incentives, like tax credits. You need to be on the National Register to get rehab tax credits. So it doesn't guarantee you grants or tax credits, but it helps for a lot of them, and for some programs, it is literally a requirement. Don't even fill out the paperwork if you're not on the National Register. So it can help you. But I'm so glad that was one of my slides, was myths about the National Register. Being on the National Register does not keep you from doing anything you want to do. Now, sometimes if you get a grant, they might say if you want a grant, you have to do this, that, and the other. But being on the register, you're still free to do anything you could have done yesterday. Yes, ma'am.
Could you say a little bit more about the significance of it being a brick school? Because from my understanding, there were relatively few of those, and I'm wondering if it's somewhat related to the economic vitality of the Cape Charles area during that time.
I would not be surprised. I've seen a couple of brick Rosenwald schools. There's one up in Dorchester County, sort of northwest of Charleston, sort of in between, if you've ever gone there, in between 995 when you get off 26 and head down towards Charleston in that area. There's actually a brick one in Portsmouth called the Key Road School, but it was originally framed and it was bricked later. So that's a distinction. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, is that it's based on that standard plan, but it was executed in brick. And again, that's something that immediately gets my attention and something I want to look at. And I'm wondering if maybe there were people who were brick masons who provided in-kind service as part of their match. Yeah, I don't know. One other thing, and I'll get you in a minute. I want to tell you how much this school is loved. I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook. I like Facebook too. And I've got to tell you how many people, both on the shore and off the shore, including the CEO of Preservation Virginia, said, oh, they've got a great group there that's going to do fantastic things, and they're so visionary. I want to say, I know, I'm talking to them tomorrow. It is a building that is known and loved. 2 weeks ago, I was in North Carolina and spent the night with a woman named Tracy Hayes, who used to run the Rosenwald Initiative for the National Trust. I said, oh, I'm going to work on a Rosenwald school in Cape Charles. She goes, oh, that great brick one. I mean, people, outside of the shore, I mean, people all over the place know this building. And I think part of it also is the brick. It sticks in people's minds. So that's one of the questions that hopefully the research will answer. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The brick Rosenwald School of Cape Charles some of that brick was actually paid for by the Able family out of Baltimore.
ABEL?
The Able Foundation. The Sun Papers, and they actually built the Catholic school, the Catholic church, and they gave a lot of that brick to the school and donated it.
Outstanding. I'm gonna make sure I get that spelling right before you leave.
ABLA.
ABLA, fit, ready, fit, and able. Okay.
Those people on the Baltimore Sun newspaper.
Okay. Well, I wonder what their interest is. And I mean, that's another thing. It's like, well, who are the Ables? Why were they giving bricks to, of course, the railroad came from, through Maryland down here, so maybe it's tied in with the railroad, who knows?
I came to Eastern Shore in 1955, and I came from a bigger school.
Okay.
Bigger school out here in Hampton, the bigger.
Okay.
So like we had like 3 first grade, 3 second grade, and when I went to Cape Charles, it was kind of like that back to me.
Okay.
Because I was used to go to a school with the no floor.
Oh, yeah.
And Cape Charles school, they had wooden floors and they had little cream stuff on for the cream floor and all that.
Yeah.
And, 2 people sitting at a desk, we used to sit down, one desk and all like this. But anyway, it was a diamond in the rough. I never dreamed that it would come to what it is today. I actually came to a better place. But the school is a historical thing.
That's a lovely thing to say. Thank you for sharing that. That's really nice. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm going to get older alumni, from the Cape Charles, Big Valley. I'm one of the older alumni in the school. And our team was saying about the floor and everything, yes, they were good, but what she described, it was so different because when I started, I actually lived, when I lived in the building, I wasn't quite 5 years old. A group of 10 of us were chosen to be a class free kindergarten. Group of children, 10 children, a very small class. The teacher, I didn't know where she was from, but she was from the area. Her name was Smith, I can sit her right now. And evidently it was a grant that had been given to the town or the school children. And 10 children at that time were not quite more than 5 years old. I was 5. School opened in September. I was 5 years old. I walked with my siblings, my older sister and my big sister. We went to that classroom. That was 1939.
Can you think about it? Because pre-K, that was not universal.
That was so special because
Yeah.
grants evidently only 2 years. Because after 2 years, they had been away from it.
Yeah. Well, isn't it lucky that you've got the benefit of that early childhood education?
School, it was the best of the best because actually it was kindergarten just about.
Yep. It's
So
awesome.
all of that, I'll tell you, I would be here all day long.
I'm going to get you, neighbor. I'm going to get you. You're on my list now.
Yes, thank us, Thank you so much, Ms. Hanberry. Next, we're going to call up Beth Walker. If you remember, Beth is our assistant secretary, and Beth is also the owner of the Northampton Hotel. And if you saw the restoration that took place at that hotel, that was what she does. And so we're very happy to have her on the board. And she is the project manager for the restoration of the school, and she's going to tell you what we've been doing.
Thank you, Mary, for giving us more reasons to treasure the Cape Charles Elementary School. And hello to all of you. This is kind of overwhelming for us to see such a crowd. Thank you for being curious about the building and supportive of the initiative, and we're glad you're here. Before I give you an update of the Architectural Committee's progress, I think it's important to talk to you about the proposed use of the building. Our first slide gives you an idea of what's coming, but we're going to dig a little deeper. And right now, I just want to take a moment to recognize the people that have gotten us to this point. So thank you, founding board members. Thank you, alumni, for sharing your building with us, sharing your history. I think everyone in this room can appreciate all of that. So while the school will not function as a museum in the traditional sense, it will be a monument to African American history in Cape Charles and far beyond, as Mary has pointed out to us. So it will indeed teach about the past, but it will be creating a brighter future for many. It is and will be cherished by the historic preservation enthusiasts, alumni of the school, their families and friends. The initiative anticipates several requests to host events that center around African American culture, but welcomes other groups to do the same. Let's talk about the vision that the founding members had. So, this Ccrsri mission is to recognize the Cape Charles Rosenwald School legacy and offer experiences that engage and enrich the community, promote cultural awareness and understanding, and support self-sufficiency and economic mobility. That's a mouthful, but we can do it. So the plan is to balance educational, civic, and community activities with revenue-generating event space, rentals, and operate a financially sustainable nonprofit organization. Our goal is to reduce long-standing barriers to educational opportunities and quality of life experiences, and help break the cycle of generational poverty that has a grip on Northampton County and the Eastern Shore as a whole. So speaking of education, we have found a key educational partner that believes in our mission. And I don't know how familiar you all are with the positive changes taking place at the Eastern Shore Community College campus in Melfa, but what they're doing is incredible. They have a new culture of YES, which stands for Your Eastern Shore. I just learned, I got it right. So they're all about promoting inclusion, diversity, and a spirit of community engagement in education. And we're right there with them. So we see a possible home, I'm not saying we're taking over the programs, but the school can be a place where we can be involved with their Contact Career, Fast Forward, Dual Enrollment, Project Horizons, and Virginia Registered Apprenticeship programs. And we're currently working with their IT department to ensure that our building design incorporates dedicated space to house the necessary equipment to host both in-person and remote classes. So this is very significant and exciting. The fact that people who live on the southern portion of the Eastern Shore will not have to waste precious time and gas money riding up and down Route 13 is a potential game changer. So we're working to find other programming partners as well. And let's look at who they might be, and we don't have to look very far. The school is located within a mile of many major Northampton County employers that need to train their employees, talking about hospitality and service sectors, industrial, municipal, fitness and healthcare employers. They're going to be our neighbors. And someone's in the process of developing a large workforce housing community down the street. The school can be the place to bring employees and employers together, teachers and students together, friends together. So let's talk about who else can use the school facility and grounds. People wishing to start small businesses might need space to put together and package their products. Bakers, canners, caterers. What about attending a cooking class at this school? Chef Amy Brandt, no pressure, could teach a class on how to start a catering business or bake Christmas cookies, life-changing or pure fun, or maybe they're the same. Thank you, Amy, for catering today. So we can be another option for people looking for outdoor recreation as well. The Rails to Trails Spur will deliver people practically to our door. Anyone can come and enjoy walking the trails or gardens. So why do we think this plan will work? Because there is no other property like this for people to rent. Think corporate events, conferences, weddings, family reunions. We'll have everything a group might need. A catering kitchen, be handicapped accessible, large and small room options, restrooms, of course, plenty of parking, and again, location. Close to downtown restaurants, lodging, and shops. Our goal is to balance, again, income-generating events with mission-fulfilling programming and pay for the building's operation. So our accomplishments to date, it's a long list, right? And you might not be aware of them. Obviously know now that we purchased the school building property free and clear, but we've been able to secure in-kind architectural services and civil engineering design services. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural design are all well underway. We have fully documented the existing structure with drawings and photographs. We've performed lead and asbestos-containing materials testing, secured an additional 6.29 acres from the town of Cape Charles. So we have a huge 8.8 acre campus. I'm not gonna lie, some of it is swamp, but, but it's pretty. Let's see, well, we're working with the town of Cape Charles to share a sewer tie-in because they're gonna have their new municipal office right around the corner. That's gonna be significant cost savings. We have, we're also working to incorporate a golf cart path that will lead to the municipal building, but also will lead to our door. We've removed some dying trees and trimmed the trees that were causing damage to the roof. We've secured funding of approximately $600,000, and it's going to be for the work listed there: permitting, selected demolition and abatement, roof replacement, preliminary site work, electric service, stormwater design. And I just want to take a moment to thank our professional consultants and advisors. I want you all to know that we're not just doing this on our own. We are relying on people that actually know what they're doing. In particular, the architecture and civil engineers. They have donated their services to us at the value shown there. $65,000 for the architecture, $90,000 for the civil engineering. No small gift. All right, so we've spent some time talking about the function of the building, and now we need to talk about the form. How do we get from this to this? All right, so we've been working with the alumni. We find out what's important to them. We consult with the professionals I just talked about. They're experts in architecture, preservation, engineering, and abatement. And we've been working on the details. So in the next few slides, you're going to see images of very crowded drawings. And I show them because I want you to see the incredible amount of work that has gone into the project to get us to this point, not because I want you to read the notes. But you're welcome to. I'll share them with anyone who wants to see them. But this is just one of several sheets detailing the selective demolition we need to undertake. So we've had to make some hard decisions. Naturally, we want to keep as much of the historic material as we can. So this is an example of one of the rooms that's in the school. And I just want to talk about how we make the decisions about what is staying and what is going. So we have federal, state, local requirements for the remediation. Pretty much everything you see painted is lead containing. So it's a nightmare, I'm not going to lie. But we do have an abatement contractor who is fully capable of handling this for us. And so every decision we make impacts our schedule and our budget. So this is an example of the approach we're taking with this room. The badly damaged ceiling will be removed and rebuilt to look as it does now, minus all of the staining. The plaster wall, it's not that bad, so we're just going to repair that one corner. The shelves will be removed, but the supports that are there will be kept, and we will install new shelves elsewhere. So it's little details, the historic material, keeping it, finding another use for it when it doesn't fit for the purpose. And as we move forward. Window sashes will be removed. They're going to be encapsulated for shipment to the window restoration company. The beadboard wainscot and the wood components will be wet scraped for loose and flaking paint and coated with lead block primer, so ready for finish paint. So those are all the kind of details, and we went through every room and figured it out. So let's talk about the windows a little more. Mary spoke about them, and they're a really significant feature of the building, and we know this. She talked about how Booker T. Washington and the Tuskegee University architects were very particular and scientific about the windows. So we've taken a great deal of care detailing them. And we think we have a little over half of the original windows, the original sashes, and the rest will have to be replicated to match. But it's nice to see that building being used, isn't it? Okay, so moving on to another character-defining feature of the school, and that's the roof. There's a lot of coordination that's going to have to happen to get this roof replaced. I don't know how many of you have tried to pin down just one contractor recently, but we're talking about 3. So, but we're getting close. The first thing that has to happen is we have to remove the asbestos shingles. That has to be done by a licensed contractor. They have to take the shingles to a landfill across the bay. And then we need to get in there and rebuild the substructure, repair the soffits and cornices, frame in a porch on the back that has to tie into the existing roof, install the waterproofing membrane, and then finally install the shingles. So we're talking remediators, framers, and roofers. Roofers are the worst. No, I'm joking. Okay. So, there's the roof. I don't know if you've noticed, but those are fishtail shingles. As I said, they are asbestos. They're over 90 years old. They're the original. And they've done their job. And it's time to replace them. So we've found a durable aluminum roof. Anyone who wants to come see it afterwards, I was going to attempt to pick it up and show it to you, but they're complicated, they're tricky, they click together. So it's going to require some skill. But we worked with Preservation Virginia. They came and we looked through and picked the historic color. It's charcoal gray, so we've gotten that pinned down. We're still waiting on a bid. We know it's going to be up there. We're hopeful that we can pull it off and use our first choice. We are thankful to the Eastern Shore of Virginia Community Foundation for giving us a $50,000 grant for the roof replacement. Of course, that is not going to come close to paying for the whole thing, but we have our money set aside. So please tell them it's coming. This is a virtual walkthrough that was prepared by the architect a year ago. So I want you to imagine yourself in this space, nearly 6,000 square feet for learning a skill, starting a business, teaching what you know, getting reacquainted with family, solving problems, making new friends, becoming your best self, learning, knowing, doing better, together. Imagine it. It's going to happen, and it won't be in black and white, it'll be in color. So this summer I took this picture. I was at the site, I walked into the back of the school, and it was a very hot day, but in those woods, it was about 10 degrees cooler. It was an oasis. So I pulled out my ID app, because I'm a nerd, not a public speaker, as you can tell. This plant is called bear's foot. It's a native, and there were butterflies everywhere, and the birds were flying and singing, and it was magical. And to think that no one has cared for this school or these woods for 45 years, yet it's so nurturing, so inviting, and imagine what we can do with more people pouring their energy into it. Many times, as Tavia spoke about, where we just feel like this is magical, it's divine, it's supposed to happen, and we savor those moments. And then we get back to reality. Here's where we are. So the initiative has the building free and clear. It's a valuable asset. We have the funds to get the building stabilized, the roof, the windows. It's going to be looking much better on the outside. Inside will be cleaned up and safe and ready for the next stage. But the next stage is the most expensive. $935,000 is what we have priced that out.
A monument to the history and a monument to people coming together. And that was $26,000. John and Dyra Berry Foundation gave us a matching grant of $250,000. We mentioned the Eastern Shore Virginia Community Foundation, the Baldwin family, Kim and Craig Abod, Beth and Charlie Walker, Hotel Cape Charles just this year gave us a grant of $5,000. And Northampton County, we want to thank Northampton County for all of their partnership. And also Andy Buchholz, and I know I said his name wrong and I apologize. Eastern Shore Sign Company has donated some signs for us. Beth mentioned the shortfall of around $900,000, and we want you to know that while we're asking people to help us, we're also going and looking for grants. So the latest grant that we applied for is through the Department of Housing and Community Development, and it is for $1 million. It took a long time and a lot of labor, and it's called the Industrial Revitalization Grant. And these are the list of letters that we received, letters of support. And I want to read these names because we want you to know that we're in this together and that this is the community coming together to make sure that this happens. Eastern Shore Community College, Accomack Northampton Planning District Commission, the Arts Center, Bay Creek, Caresoft, Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel District, Northampton County School Board, Citizens for a Better Eastern Shore, Cape Charles Main Street, Coastal Precast, Community Partners of the Eastern Shore of Virginia, Eastern Shore Area Agency on Aging, Margaret Van Cleef, William C. Randall, Eastern Shore Virginia Maryland Baptist Association and its ministers, Eastern Shore Healthy Communities, Experimental Film Virginia, GSX Global Skills Exchange, the Northampton County Education Foundation, Preservation Virginia, the Rotary Club of Cape Charles, and the Virginia Tourism Corporation. This was the list of supporters that provided us letters in support of our grant. We are excited and we're hopeful. We'll find out later in November, early December, if we receive that grant. If you'd like, hopefully, to get information from us, please make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Such a good segue, that was a good plug. Subscribe to our newsletter. You should have been able to do that when you walked in. We wanted your email. But also, if you look on the program for today, if you're tech savvy, there is a URL code there. If you want to learn how to do that, all you do is take your phone. You go to your phone, you go to the camera, you put the camera against that little square there, and that square takes you to our website. And at the bottom of our website, you can subscribe to get our newsletter. Did it work? Good. I checked it before we did it. So, yes, sir.
The $1 million grant, is there a local match required?
There is no local match. And the town of Cape Charles actually helped us. We had to go through a local jurisdiction, and the county of Cape Charles did that for us. There is no match to that, and that's why it was so huge. It's $1 million, fair and square, no strings attached. We had to have the approval of the town council. They gave us that. They had to give us a resolution. So we are y'all can say some prayers for us to get that $1 million. So one of the things that we realize is that, you know, with COVID, this is the first time that we have met in person in 2 years. And in 2 years, as Beth has shown you, we've been working and we've been getting a lot of things accomplished, things that you can't see. And because sometimes you can't see things happening, people can start to say what they think are happening. And so we decided that we wanted to run a campaign. And this was a social media campaign. And what we decided to do is to ask each of our board members, why did you become a member of the board? Why was this important to you? What is your passion? What is your motive? And I just wanted to show you, these are some things that our board members have said. And these are posted on Facebook, this is on Twitter, and these are things that we wanted people to know. We thought it was important that they knew the care and the love and the passion that our board members have. And I'm thankful for our PR consultant. Where's Maria? Maria, can you raise your hand? She probably doesn't want to. There's Maria. So Maria's our PR consultant, and she's kind of our strategist. As you know, in the culture that we live in, there's a lot of things that come, and we have to make sure that we are ahead of them, and she helps us with that. I wanted to go, and Beth has talked to you about the grant, the theme, and what we're trying to do with the building, but I wanted you to see socially what we've been doing in the community. So this is just going to be a bunch of pictures, and I want you to some of you, you'll see yourself in these pictures, and some of you, we just want you to know what we've been doing. So Clean the Bay, this happened June 2021, and it was with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and we came out on a very sticky, hot day in June, and we helped clean our school. You'll see Congressman Luria there. She joined us, and she's a big advocate for us, and she was there the whole time, and she worked. Here you have Emoja Day. Emoja stands for unity, and we decided, this was prior to the launch of our fundraising campaign I told you about, and we wanted the community to come out and just take a big picture. We had cupcakes, we had different types of food. This was the first time that the building was open to the public. We allowed people to come in, and we actually had alumni that traveled as far as Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. to come inside the building. They had not stepped foot in the building in 60 years, and it was pretty cool. This is our virtual live stream. And this is Bob Woodson. Mr. Woodson actually owns a home in Bay Creek, and he'd given us some money, and because he believes in what we're doing, and he said, you know what, I think I can help in another way. I want to put on a live stream, and that live stream was over $8,000 that he put together and put on for us, and from that live stream is how we raised that $250,000. And it was awesome. The lady next to him is Susan Deutsch. Susan actually, Stephanie Deutsch. Stephanie is actually the wife of an ancestor of Julius Rosenwald. It's actually her husband is a great grandson of Julius Rosenwald, and she came with us, and she has written a book, So You Want a Schoolhouse. And she came, and if you can go back on our website and look at this, and it was a wonderful event. He gave some history. I talked about our local school. This was the first time that someone from the Julius Rosenwald family and the Booker T family had gotten together. And so if you want to see that, you'll see that on our virtual fundraiser. Thank you, my husband got me that dress. He did good. And we are grateful for our historic preservation allies. This is historic preservation, invisible history. Mary, you mentioned Godwin. So Thomas Godwin, I call him Stephen Godwin, is actually, did he leave? He left, but you said that, but that's his son, that was his dad. So you want to talk to him. The Rotary Club is sponsoring what they're calling the Invisible History tour, and the school will be a stop on that tour. So Medi, hello. Medi's in charge of that, and Medi's actually the author of this book. It's a wonderful book. Mr. Godwin gifted that book to my husband, and he read that book in one night, which is unlike him, and it's a wonderful read. Northampton Historical Preservation Society, Virginia, the Eastern Shore Museum Network, the Barrier Island Center, and the Cape Charles Historical Society. We did a podcast, and it came out November 1st, so if you want to go on the Barrier Islands website, we just did a podcast, and you'll hear all about the school. Juneteenth. So we decided that we wanted to get out. We wanted to go what we call up the road, and so we went to Exmoor, and we participated in the Juneteenth celebration this year. And here are some pictures for that. You'll see the Master of Ceremony, Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell, raise your hand. If you're from here, you probably had Mr. Bell as a teacher. Mr. Bell was my teacher. Mr. Bell was my mother's teacher. Mr. Bell was Beth's teacher. He was awesome. And Mr. Bell happens to be my cousin. He's wonderful, but he was honored as the Master of Ceremony. Mr. Bell is on our board, and his wife was actually a teacher at the Rosenwald School. Some more pictures of some people. We're telling them all about the school. I think the most festive event that we've had in a long time was July 4th. It was hot, but we had so much fun. And what we did is we got some, what are those things called? Thank you, golf carts. And we decorated, we decorated and we just had a ball. And we also had a tent out and we had a display. We were telling people, and if you were there, it was, I feel like hundreds of people that were there. So we really had a good time. And again, Congressman Laurier was there. Like I said, she's always around us. And we had a wonderful show of support there. So another thing that we've done in the community, if you go by Strawberry Plaza, you'll see a bench dedicated in honor of the Cape Charles Rosenwald School. So here we say, take a seat, breathe in and breathe out, and take in all the goodness the shore offers, and consider how you can give back. Back to school, we decided we wanted to be a part of the back to school drive. There's so many people doing things with back to school, so we decided not to do something on our own, but we partnered with the sheriff's office, and we were at Oklahonic, and we were also at Kiptopeke. Now, this is today. The people say, how can you get involved? And someone, you probably know Sabrina. I think everybody knows Sabrina Proctor. Sabrina just retired, well, halfway retired. She was a principal at Kiptopeke, and she came to me and she said, Tavia, she came to Miss Davis. She came to Miss Davis, and then Miss Davis came to me, right, Miss Davis? Okay. And she says, I want to do something, but I know it won't be a lot, but I want to do something. She says, and the idea, let's do a yacht dinner. And I grew up on yacht, so I knew exactly what it was. But we had so many people say, well, what in the world is yacht? Well, go to First Baptist Church today at 10 o'clock. You had to pre-order, but I'm sure she's made more. And she's doing, her family is doing this, and all the proceeds will go to the Rosenwald School. And so we're really thankful. We're really thankful. 10 to 12.
12 o'clock.
Oh, this is 10 to 12. 12 to 2. Sorry. Quick thing. If you think you can't give, you can. This family did that. And come to us if there's anything that you would like to do, whether that's something with your church, that's something with your family. Every little bit helps. Yes.
I'm one of those older adults who's not necessarily tech savvy. And I don't give electronically.
Yes.
And I haven't heard a lot of talk about people still writing checks.
Yes, ma'am, you can write a check. Yes. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 294. Okay. I'm just saying, oh, and thank you, it's in the booklet, but it's 294 Cape Charles 23310. And you can write a check if you would like.
Today.
Yes. I wanted to make sure that I talked to you about the BRIC campaign. You have this brochure on your tables, and this was an idea of a former, actually an alumni, and a former board member. So Mr. Williams, can you raise your hand, sir? He came to us, and he said, hey, I have a great idea. And he did have a great idea. And it was to raise money through the BRIC campaign. So if you look there, you can have a brick engraved, and it will be placed somewhere on the property. And we haven't figured all that out yet, but it will be on the property, and bricks are $250. We would love for you to do that. And we do take checks. And these bricks are engraved, professionally engraved. So, our motto, keep learning, know better together. Hopefully you've learned today what we've been doing for the past 2 years. We were locked in from COVID, but we did not stop working. The vision that Bev shared with you with the school is something that we have talked about and pondered for years. Our alumni has been involved in that process, and we've gone out professionally. And hopefully you see and will share with the community the good things that will come out of Cape Charles Elementary School. We want to thank you for your time. Thank you for spending it with us. We've stayed within our time frame, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes.
I take it, we've been talking about grants, money, those type of things, but where we are at this point, roughly how much money do we need to finish what we're working on?
Yes, so if we get the $1 million grant, we'll need approximately $600,000. Without that, we'll need $1.6 million. Yeah, that's even easy, thank God. So, and did I get that? I'm going to go to my treasurer. That is correct. That is correct.
That's to get the building completely renovated. Not doing it.
Yes, that's to get the building completely renovated. That is not to handle the programs and programming that we want to have in the building. So that 1.6 is for the renovation of the building. There will still be money that we need to raise and that we need to partners with to help us with the programming, with the school functions that will go there, with the other things that we want inside of the building. Yes.
You mentioned anyone can write grants?
Yes. If there is a grant writer, if you know someone that writes grants well, we would love to bring them on board. Yes, sir. Yes, we most definitely. Yes, we thought it would be actually in October, and they haven't announced yet. But yes, we will. If you are on our subscribers, you will get that information. Yes, and especially if we get it, it'll go out everywhere. Yes.
I'd just like to say that when the participants wrote to the building, it would take about 6,000 bricks to do it. At 4,000 bricks, we were made an hour. So
cool.
We just sell 4,000 bricks, we go in and out.
Thank you. I saw a hand over here.
Will you know when you get the $1 million? Do you know about when you get an answer on that?
It's supposed to be November. Now that we're already in November, I'm saying early December, but it's supposed to be November. Any more questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Maddie. Yes, ma'am.
What are your plans about sustaining the fund?
Her question was, what are our plans for sustaining the funding? We are still working on that. We want to get grants. We want to hire an executive director. So we have a ways to go. And so that is still something that we're working on. We're hoping to have an endowment. It's still something that we have questions about. Okay, if you want to donate a brick today or you want to get a brick in your name, that Miss Shirley Gallo will be at the table. Yes.
Last thing, I have been very shocked to find out that in the book, I am the May Queen.
So if you look inside the book, what page is that? So on page 26, we have our May Queen in the house. I think that's so cool. So the May Queen is here. So if you want to get a picture with the May Queen, please do so after $5. Maybe more. Anything else? Did I cover everything as far as finances? Okay. All right. Again, thank you for our partners, our donors. We appreciate you. Thank you for those who took the time to come out today. You can be dismissed.